Look at almost any early game map across Kanto, Johto, or Kalos, and you will find the exact same creature waiting for you. For most trainers, Pidgey functions as a moving target. It is a fragile, bottom-tier bird placed right at the beginning of the journey, where new adventurers need a harmless opponent to test their skills. This radar chart maps out its base attributes, and the numbers are incredibly low. With a severely depressed 40 in HP and a 35 in special attack, its stat total peaks at just 251. Combine that with a maximum catch rate of 255, and the math ensures this creature puts up almost zero resistance. In an ecosystem filled with massive predators and aggressive elementals, a bird this structurally frail should be a prime candidate for extinction. Yet the reality is entirely backward. Pidgey has successfully colonized nearly half the known globe, maintaining massive, stable populations across incredibly diverse regions. To understand how, we have to look closely at its biological classification. Officially documented as the Tiny Bird Pokémon, its Pokédex entries consistently highlight a definitive behavioral trait. It is exceptionally docile and intensely dislikes fighting. It shares its immediate environment with fire-breathing lizards, toxic insects, and creatures made of solid rock. Choosing absolute pacifism in this habitat is a massive evolutionary risk. How does a physically weak, dedicated pacifist manage to thrive and become one of the most prolific species on a planet built entirely around combat? The answer lies in total evasion. Pidgey survives by completely rejecting the idea of a fair fight, retreating into the deep shadows of tall grass to remain entirely unseen. When a predator does spot it, Pidgey avoids trading blows. Instead, it drops to ground level and rapidly flaps its wings. This is the sand attack maneuver, a targeted, desperate attempt to whip up blinding dirt, buying the bird exactly enough time to escape. That same blinding cloud is incredibly versatile. By violently stirring up the dirt, Pidgey actively drives hidden insect prey out of the undergrowth and into the open, feeding itself without ever initiating a direct confrontation. Even biological disorientation works to its advantage. Pidgey possesses an ability called Tangled Feet. If it ever becomes concussed or confused by an attack, its movements become utterly unpredictable, drastically increasing its evasiveness. Every aspect of its biology is optimized for slipping away from danger. It turns its physical vulnerabilities into the exact tools it needs for survival and sustenance. Fleeing is only half the equation. Once Pidgey escapes, it relies on its greatest biological advantage to recover, an extremely sharp sense of direction. Look closely at this tracking map. Researchers document an unerring homing instinct inside the species. No matter how erratically it flies to avoid a predator, or how far off course it gets blown, it can always draw a straight line directly back to its nest. This internal navigation tool makes the entire species geographically unlosable. Massive, sudden displacements cannot fracture their populations because every single bird knows exactly how to get home. This rapid retreat is supported by a base speed stat of 56. It is the only baseline attribute Pidgey has that edges out the early game competition, proving its anatomy is built primarily to facilitate a swift exit. A blinding localized defense paired with flawless global navigation makes combat completely unnecessary. Pidgey is the ultimate elusive survivor. But the historical Pokédex entries hide a very specific warning. While Pidgey strongly prefers to avoid conflict, a disturbed or cornered bird will ferociously strike back. If pushed to its limits, its combat strategy flips entirely. At higher levels, its learn set abandons evasion in favor of pure, destructive offense. This chart visualizes that escalation. Pidgey starts out relying on a weak tackle, outputting a base power of 40. But reaching upper development tiers, it unlocks atmospheric attacks like Hurricane at power level 110 and Brave Bird at an overwhelming 120. The physical escalation follows the exact same trajectory. As it evolves into Pidgeotto and finally Pidgeot, it permanently trades its docile nature for territorial dominance, gaining a massive, imposing frame and a viciously sharp beak. The initial encounter with a Pidgey suggests a harmless target, but the species' final form reveals a high-altitude predator that commands its territory with absolute force. This biological strategy relies on a total pivot. It uses strict pacifism as a bridge, maintaining high population density through avoidance until it develops the raw power required to reshape the food chain. A single bird in the brush carries the capacity for sudden, explosive aggression. Stepping into the tall grass means crossing paths with a creature that has mastered the transition from prey to predator.